I'm going to read chapter 6, in which Fix the detective betrays a very natural impatience. Before reading chapter 6, I'll talk about chapter 5. And Mr. Priest Fogg and Courtford arrived at the train stations, and the club members came to the station. And so according to the story, and Paul was suspected to rob the bank, and so detective might chase Paul. Okay, I'm going to read.
In 80 Days by Jules Verne, translated by George Makepeace Towell. Chapter 6, in which Fix, the detective, betrays a very natural impatience. The circumstances under which this telegraphic dispatch about Phileas Fogg was sent were as follows.
The steamers Mongolia, belonging to the Spanish Orient Company, built of Ireland, 2,800 ton burden, 500 horsepower words.
The 11 o'clock a.m. on Wednesday, the 9th of October, at Suez.
The Mongolians fly regularly between the British and Bombay via the Suez Canal, and was one of the fastest steamers belonging to the company, always making more than 10 knots hours between the British and Suez.
9.5 between Suez and Bombay.
To memorize the promenading up and down the wharves, and among the crowd of natives and strangers who were sojourning at distance struggling.
That's a fast-growing town.
One was the British consul at Suez, who, despite the proficiency of the English government and the unfavorable prediction of Stephenson, was in the habit of seeing the Burmese officer in the
daily passing to and fro on the Great Canal, by which the old roundabout route from England to India by the Cape of Good Hope was abridged by at least a half.
The other was a small, slight-built personage, stood with an nervous, intelligent face and bright eyes, and peering out front under eyebrows, which he was instantly
just now manifesting unmistakable signs of impatience, nervously pacing up and down, and unable to stand still for a moment.
This was Fix, one of the detectives who had been dispatched from England in search of the bank robber. It was his task to narrow which every passenger who arrived as well to follow up the whole seemed to
suspicious characters, or bore a resemblance to the description of the criminal, which he had received 2 days before from the police headquarters at London.
The detective was evidently inspired by the hope of obtaining that splendid reward which would be the prize of success, and awaited with a feverish impatience to
the arrival of the steamer Mongolia. So you say, Consul, asked he for the 20th time, that the steamer is never behind time?
No, Mr. Fix, replied the consul. She was as best spoken yesterday at Port Said, and the rest of the ways of no account to such a
I repeat that the Mongolia has been in advance of the time required by the company's regulations, and gained the prize awarded for excess of speed. Does she come directly from Brindisi?
Directly from Brindisi. She takes on the Indian mail there. She left her Saturdays at 5 p.m. Have patience with Fix, she will not be late.
But really, I don't see how, from the description you have, you will be able to recognize your man, even if he is on board the Mongolia.
A man rather feels the presence of these fellows, consuls, then recognize them. You must have a scent for them. A scent is like sixth sense, which combines hearing, seeing, and smelling.
I've arrested more than one of these gentlemen in my time, and if my thief is on board, I'll answer for it. He'll not slip through my fingers.
I hope so, Mr. Fix. For it was a heavy robbery. A magnificent robbery is considered 55,000 pounds. We don't often have such windfalls.
Have such windfalls? Burglars are getting to be so contemptible nowadays. A fellow gets hung for a handful of shillings.
Mr. Fix, said the consul, I like your way of talking. Hope you will succeed, but I fear you will find it far easy.
Don't you see, the description which you have there has a singular resemblance to an honest man.
console. Remark that detective dogmatically great love always resemble honest folks.
Scowling faces have only one course to take, and that is to remain honest. Otherwise, they would be arrested offhand.
The archaic image, John masked honest countenance is no light task, I admit, parody or art. Mr. Fix evidently was not wanting in a thing of self-conceit.
Little by little, the scene on the quay became more animated. Sailors of various nations, merchants, shipbrokers, porters, fellows, bustled to and fro as if the steamer were immediately expected.
The weather was clear, and slightly till the minaret of the town loomed of this house in the pale rays of the sun, which appeared some 2,000 of yards along, extending it.
A number of fishing smacks and coasting boats, some retaining the fantastic fashion of ancient galleys, were discernible on the Red Sea.
As he passed among the busy crowd, it fixed, according to habit, scrutinized the passers by with a keen left glance. It was now 10:30.
"Steamer doesn't come," he exclaimed as the port clock struck. "She can't be far off now," returned his companion. "How long will she stop at Suez?"
2 hours, long enough to get in how cold.
It is 1,310 miles from Suez to Aden, at the other end of the Red Sea, and she has to take in a fresh supply of coal.
And does she go from Suez directly to Bombay, without putting in any words? Good, said Fix.
If the robber is on board, he will no doubt get off at Suez, so as to reach the Dutch or French colonies in Asia by some other route.
He ought to know that he would not be saved an hour in India, as to which his English is so, unless the object is to console his extraordinary.
Extremely shrewd. An English criminal, you know, is always better concealed in London than anywhere else.
This observation punished the detective's food for thought, and meanwhile the consul went away to his office.
Left alone, was more impatient than ever, having a presentiment that the robber was on board the Mongolia.
If he had indeed left London intending to reach the New World, he would naturally take the route to the Indies, which was less to watch and more difficult to watch. And
Fix's reflections were soon interrupted by a succession of sharp whistles, which announced the arrival of the Mongolia.
the porters to him fellows to rush down the quay. A dozen boats pushed off from the struggles to anchor in the road.
Passing along between the banks, and 11 o'clock struck as she anchored in the road. She brought an unusual number of passengers, some of whom remained on deck to scan the picturesque panorama of the town, while the greater part disembarked in the boats and landed on the quay.
Fix took up position and carefully examined each faced figures which made its appearance.
Presently, one of the passengers, after vigorously pushing his way through the importunate crowd of porters, came up to him and politely asked him if he could point out the English consulate, at the same time
showing his passport, which he wished to have possessed. Fix instinctively took the passport and, with a left glance, but the discrepancy bear.
An involuntary motion of surprise nearly escaped him, for the description in the passport was identical with that of the bank robber which he had received from Scotland Yard.
"Is this your passport?" asked he. "No, it's my master's." "And your master is? He stayed on board."
On board. But he must go to the consul's in person so as to establish his identity. Oh, is that necessary? Quite indispensable. And where is the consulate? There.
"There, on the corner of the square," said Fix, pointing out 200 steps off. "I go and fetch my master, who won't be much pleased, however, to this
The
bird."
passenger bowed to Fix and returned to the steamer. 6.
Alright, so after reading chapter 6, and I thought it almost same, Les Miserables, you know, Zhang Valjean, and then detective, apparently, police department, detector, chased Zhang Valjean as a criminal person, and same here, and picks the detective tried to catch the Mr. Fogg, freeze Fogg. Interesting. And then when reading the story and knowing the clue and the story that makes our readers enjoyable. And alright, then